Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining to everyone in person and on Zoom. This is the OneSTL Sustainability Lab, and OneSTL is a collaborative sustainability initiative for the bi-state St. Louis region. And my name's Anna Cott. I'm a sustainability planner at East West Gateway Council of Governments, and we have these monthly sustainability labs to talk about different topics. Today we'll be discussing the sustainability aspects in St. Louis County's comprehensive plan. And next month, we'll be hearing from, about the city of St. Louis's climate and sustainability plan. Sunny Hutton is leading their engagement efforts for that plan. So it'll be an interactive input session, and that is on Tuesday, February 25th at 3:45. The labs are always the last Tuesday afternoon of the month. So you can find more information about that at onestl.org. And please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat for anyone online. And I will go ahead and pass it over to Paul Weatherford. He's a senior long-range planner with St. Louis County, talking about the comprehensive plan that they have in process. And we're really glad to hear about this.
Everything goes through this.
Oh, okay, okay. Talking to that. Great. Wonderful. Well, I just want to start by thanking Anna and Aaron and our friends here at T-Rex for having us this afternoon. We're really excited to be sharing with you all about STL Code 2050 and provide an update on sort of where we're at in the planning process and sort of what our next steps are. So to start, just want to go over real quickly what a comprehensive plan is for anyone who's not familiar. These are really foundational documents for local governments to use and really guide them in decision making around land use, transportation, housing, economic development. Really, everything that you think of that makes up a community is considered in a comprehensive plan. Sorry, here we go. Okay. So what we're doing here in St. Louis County is really for the first time in a long time trying to set this vision for county government and for county the community as a whole, and really trying to lead within the region. St. Louis County last adopted a comp plan in 1980, so it's a little overdue. But we're excited to be doing this process and sort of setting this vision for the county that I think is the lack of that vision is really apparent when you look at the built environment and sort of see what we've created over the last 40 plus years. And a lot of the sort of conflicts or disagreements or fiscal position that the county's in, right? The things that make the news, right? I think stem from a lack of sort of a strategic vision. So some of the outcomes we identified at the outset of what we're trying to achieve with 2050 are things that you would typically see in a comp plan, safe and thriving communities, increased housing opportunities, fiscal responsibility, resilience, these types of things. But what we're trying to do is look at all of these different themes or sectors or ideas, however you want to think about it, through a lens of equity and sustainability, and really have those sort of be two guiding principles for our planning process. So what we've done basically for all of 2024 up until now is a lot of community conversations, a lot of engagement, a lot of talking with folks, key stakeholders, as well as doing a lot of research into the sort of data that really tells the story of where St. Louis County is, and really help us establish this idea of where we're at, so then we can sort of measure against that as we move into 2050, right? And so through doing sort of that combination of looking at existing data and research and having a lot of robust community engagement. We've landed on these sort of 5 key priority areas that our planning process is, these are the sort of the big questions in front of the county, right? And once we have an adopted plan, decisions that county government makes, whether that's the county executive preparing a budget or, the county council making legislative decisions or departments adopting new policies or creating new programs or expanding existing policies and programs. We need to be asking ourselves, the question is, is what we're doing advancing us towards one of these, solving one of these problems? If it's not, we have to kind of step back and ask ourselves, well, why are we doing this? And sort of justify to ourselves that doing something that is sort of in opposition to solving these problems, why should we do that? Which we haven't really had that sort of guiding vision or document to help us when we make those decisions for 40 plus years now. So I'll just go through these briefly to kind of set the stage of some of the challenges, and I think maybe opportunities is maybe a better word, opportunities in front of the county. So the first and sort of most, I don't want to say most important because they're all important, but the one that sort of undergirds everything is population stagnation within the county and within the region. The county has not grown in 50 years. You can look at this chart is showing the population trends in the metro region, so the full MSA, not just the county. You can see St. Louis has sort of flatlined since the 70s, and these peer regions that we're competing against, most of them were smaller than us 50 years ago, have surpassed us, right? I think it's showing Charlotte and Orlando as smaller than the St. Louis MSA. I think by now they have surpassed the St. Louis MSA. And so this is a real challenge in front of us. And one thing I want to point out is the story is frequently in our region focuses on the city of St. Louis and population decline in the city of St. Louis, which is certainly a very real and true thing that has a large impact on the health of our region. But that's not the full story. We see development happening. Often we'll hear folks talk about, look what's happening in St. Charles County, or, this building goes up, or look at this new subdivision being built, or these new businesses expanding. Development does not equal growth. And frequently, all we're doing is moving people around within this sort of same geography, right? So we're not attracting folks to our region, and at this point, the demographic trends are showing that we're actually losing folks naturally. We have more deaths than births in our region, and so you can see on this bar chart sort of the percent share population within the region. You can see the decline in the city of St. Louis corresponding with an increase in St. Charles County, but St. Louis County has stayed stable. In 1970, St. Louis County was 950,000 folks. Now we're just under 1 million. So we've grown 50,000 people in 50 years, which is a negligible amount. It's not anything really. Which leads to what we are calling infrastructure cost burden. So I'm going to say this, even though Anna recorded, maybe we can pause the recording for 2 minutes. No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm just going to say it. I have that good civil service protection. Local government is a Ponzi scheme. It really is. We rely on, and this is not a thing unique to St. Louis County. This is local governments everywhere, right? They rely on future growth to pay for current needs, right? Whether that's repaving roads or building new roads or expanding services somewhere. And that works when you're growing, when you're attracting new folks, and right. But if you're not, and you stop growing, what do you do? Right. And that's what's happened to us. We haven't grown for 50 years, but we've kept building like we were. we've spread out as far as we can spread out. We can't go any further west. Obviously, we're sort of bound by the rivers. The topography and terrain in far western and southwestern county isn't really suitable to build on, even if we wanted to. Um, and so essentially the checks come due. We can't afford to pay for what we've currently built. What we've built works for what it is. We have a really, really robust road network anecdotally, if you're anywhere within St. Louis County, you can get probably anywhere else within 20, 30 minutes, right? No matter time of day. So it works for what it is, but it doesn't work for a large percentage of our population. If you think about folks that do not have access to a vehicle, whether that's by choice or by economic circumstance. A lot of our elderly residents can almost feel trapped, right? They're not able to get to the grocery store or their doctor or church or whatever it is, right? And then it places a real burden on county government fiscally, right? So for the average single family detached house in St. Louis County to collect enough revenue from that piece of property to replace just the stretch of road in front of that piece of property, it would take the county 100 years to collect enough revenue to replace that stretch of road in front of somebody's home. Roads don't have 100-year lifespans. They typically 20, 25 years. So you'd have to replace the road 4 times over in the amount of time it would take to collect enough revenue just to replace it once, right? That's not even accounting for routine maintenance, repair, let alone doing transformative projects to the county's road network. Part of our engagement with the community was sending out a survey countywide, and we've heard from folks that there's an over-reliance on single occupancy vehicles and sort of an underutilization of transit. Over half of respondents report that they regularly are using only a car, right? And that's often out of necessity. People responded that they were dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with access to the bus, access to Metrolink, reliability, there's safety. We have disconnected sidewalk network, bus stops that aren't in convenient locations or safe locations. So it makes it really difficult for people to use anything other than a single occupancy vehicle. The third sort of issue that we're trying to address is what we're calling a job skills mismatch. And really, what this is using educational attainment and on-the-job training as sort of a proxy for skill level of a worker. We are producing more high school workers in St. Louis County than we have high school jobs available to them. So these are the graduates of SLU, Maryville, WashU, Webster, right, that are spending 4, 6, sometimes even 8 years here, building a life here, that graduate, and then we don't have anything for them and they're leaving. Or sort of the reverse of that, if you have kids that have grown up here, they go off somewhere for college, they're not coming home. They're not coming back because why would they? They go off and experience a region or a city that is vibrant and growing and has the amenities and the types of housing and access to transit that they're looking for that we don't have, that we haven't built. Sort of the inverse of that is we have way more low-skilled jobs than low-skilled workers within the county. I think the easiest sort of corollary to a low-skilled job would be a retail worker. And if you think about sort of where retail is located within St. Louis County, most of the people working those jobs will not be able to afford to live within close proximity of where they work, right? So we're having to import workers from Jefferson County, the city of St. Louis, Metro East, Franklin County, right? And these folks, because we've overbuilt our road network and sort of underinvested in public transit, are forced to use single occupancy vehicles most of the time to get to where they need to go. The fourth big issue is housing diversity and affordability. Basically, all we build in St. Louis County are large single-family detached homes, frequently on large lots, right? Which, if you remember from a few slides ago, those properties are not producing enough revenue to support the provision of services to them and to other land uses. Approximately 85% of all the land in St. Louis County is developed with a single family detached house. And this is not to say that there's anything wrong with living in a single family detached home. I live in one. But when that's all you build and you don't provide other housing typologies or opportunities for folks, it can become a real challenge in accessing safe and affordable housing. Home ownership is unattainable due to cost for a variety of reasons. What we build are single family detached homes, which typically cost more. We build large single family homes that average 3 or 4 bedrooms, which does not really align with the average household size anymore. We heard from folks that affordability of housing was a key issue, was the number 3 issue in our survey among residents. Over half of respondents were either dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with affordability of housing. And this is really like the narrative in our region is St. Louis is an affordable place to live, right? But that's not what we're hearing from folks. And a large part of that is due to maintenance costs. If you think about sort of the natural development pattern that's occurred in our region, moving west from the city of St. Louis, those homes sort of in inner ring St. Louis County, closer to the city, are older. They cost a lot more to maintain. They are often in desirable neighborhoods as well, and so they might be more expensive up front, and they have maintenance costs on top of that, which can be a real struggle for people to stay in their homes. And then we have a real disparity between owner-occupied households and renter-occupied households in terms of cost burden. So cost burden is a federal definition. You're spending 30% or more of your income on housing costs. So this would be rent, mortgage, utilities, property tax, those types of things. If you're spending more than 30%, you're considered cost burden. If you own a home in St. Louis County, you're doing relatively well. It's about 17% of owner-occupied households are cost burden, which has gone down over the past 15, 20 years. If you rent a home, the story is very different, right? About 45% of renter-occupied households in St. Louis County are cost burdened. And so this gap is widening between owner-occupied and renter-occupied. And if we hold true to the idea that home ownership is the sort of the pathway, whether it's we agree with it or not, it's sort of the way it works in our country, right? Home ownership is the pathway for folks to enter into a solidly middle-class life, stable neighborhoods, build generational wealth. The folks that we're asking to transition into that, renters, are increasingly unable to do that because they can barely afford to just rent, right? How can they save up enough to then transition into home ownership? So this is a real challenge and leads to those issues of population decline. And then the fifth sort of opportunity that we've identified is what we're calling social environmental resilience. The county has a lot of vulnerabilities to heat, to extreme weather events, and we have not created a built environment that is resilient in the face of a changing climate, right? And a large part of that is because we didn't have the tools to help us do that. When you have a comp plan from 40 years ago, our zoning ordinance, which is sort of the main regulatory tool that a local government has, is from 1965. It's even older, right? So if you can think about what was 1965 America like, right? It was single family home, white picket fence, everybody has a car and a chicken in their pot, right? I think that was the promise. that's what our tools are designed to build, right? And so if we want to build something different, we have to create new tools for us to use. And so we're experiencing these issues in heat disparity and flooding, and often these events there are real socioeconomic disparities in those experiences. There's a real risk for flood. Nearly a fifth of the county's area is within the floodway or the 100-year floodplain. And we don't really talk about creeks a lot, but I mean, that's where flash flooding is coming from, right? And that's the um, sort of biggest risk in front of us. Tree canopy densities, varies throughout St. Louis County. The county does not have currently, we don't have any tree preservation requirements. So if you were to buy a piece of property and you wanted to develop it with a single family subdivision, you could remove every tree on that lot, and we would only require you to put one tree back for every home you build. Right. There are some communities with some municipalities within the county that have, um, more stringent tree preservation requirements. But when you think about unincorporated St. Louis County, which we have direct sort of regulatory control over, it's a third of the land, a third of the people. That's the single largest jurisdiction in this region is unincorporated St. Louis County. And we don't have those types of requirements and those regulations in. And then if you can remember from I can go back here real quick, this heat disparity map, probably should have had these on the same slide. Sorry about that. But the heat disparity map, where it's darker red, is showing average temperature is warmer, is a mirror of this tree canopy map. And a lot of this sort of the experiences of urban heat island effect and the benefits that trees provide folks are not experienced equally throughout St. Louis County. And which leads to this sort of the uneven consequences of these environmental hazards. Whether this was done by happenstance or by deliberate decisions, more often than not, the latter. This is sort of the idea where if you were to create a map, which we sort of have here, showing the location of Superfund sites, brownfields, existing industrial place types and land uses, and overlaid that over a map showing income or rates of poverty or race or educational attainment, you're more often than not going to be looking at the same map. And so one of the real challenges in front of us is how do we, as we look to rebuild our community, how do we address some of these historical wrongs, and how do we create a built environment that is resilient and adaptable in the face of all these hazards. So that's sort of what we have been doing for a lot of the last year, and sort of telling the story of St. Louis County and where we are. And a lot of it is, to be honest, is sort of uncomfortable conversations and hard truths that we haven't acknowledged about ourselves in a long time. But if we don't do that, then we're not actually going to make any progress moving forward. So where we're at now, this is maybe a little misleading. I think we're kind of more halfway in between prioritizing high impact and creating action-oriented strategies. But what we've been doing is taking everything we learned and identifying policies and programs and ways to effectuate change, effectuate positive change to address some of these issues. So we had a series of open houses where we had sort of initial policy recommendations. We've been fine tuning those. And sort of what I'm going to share now and sort of the second half of the presentation is sort of our policy themes and some specific policies centered around, since this is the Sustainability Lab, some sustainability concerns. Um, so we've grouped policy ideas into these five themes: inclusive economies, complete communities, sustainable infrastructure, responsible growth, and leading the region. And really, I think this slide is probably more important than the last one. All of these um, themes or the reason we're grouping them into themes is really what we're trying to do is maximize co-benefits of each policy idea or recommendation. It's this idea that there are no real solutions to any of our problems. Everything is just a series of trade-offs. And the trade-off we did for the past 50 plus years of developing with large single-family detached homes, and everybody needs a single occupancy vehicle, has led to a lot of the environmental issues we've had. We're experiencing a lot of the unequal distribution throughout the county of all kinds of things, right? Um, and so what we're trying to do is identify which policy can have the biggest impact across the sort of cross-cutting across the most areas throughout the county, right? Uh, and so sustainable infrastructure, what does that look like for us? What are things we're considering? And I will preface this by saying this is not written in stone. One, the plan is not finished, so there's always room to make changes, and we're still evaluating things, and so there will be stuff left on the cutting room floor, and there will be things added after I finish speaking with you all this afternoon. But then also, once we have an adopted plan, it's intended to be a living, breathing document that we're continuously evaluating our progress on. And 3, 4, 5 years from now, we might say, hey, we have this goal. We thought we should do XYZ. XYZ is not really working for us. Maybe we need to do something else. And what does that look like, right? Rather than just having, etched in stone, this is what we're doing for the next 25 years. So things like growing our tree canopy, finding ways to prioritize the protection of existing tree canopy, which we aren't currently doing, expanding sort of natural spaces throughout the county, defining our road priorities. So it's, before we prioritized moving vehicles as quickly as many as we could. And so it's about how do we allocate our resources to get the outcomes that we want. A lot of what has resulted from reliance on single occupancy vehicles is excess parking, a lot of excess impervious surface that besides the sort of obvious negative effects on the environment and increased stormwater runoff is really fiscally irresponsible use of land. It does not produce any revenue, and so there's a lot of land within the county that's tied up with pavement that's doing nothing for anybody really. So what would eliminating parking minimums or changing those requirements look like? Looking at better policy ideas around development in the floodplain, stricter rules about where and what can be built, increasing design regulations, and increasing restrictions on land use types within the floodplain, including even potentially a complete moratorium on floodplain development. Which again, if you think a fifth of think about a fifth, 20% of county land is within the 100-year floodplain. That's a large percentage, right? A lot of it has been developed, mostly with single-family homes. People have creeks running through their backyards or the common ground in their neighborhoods. We have some restrictions around development, but maybe we could tighten those up. Developing land suitability analysis to identify particularly sensitive or high risk areas that might need additional protections, right? And then, encouraging the use of, transfer of development rights or purchase of development rights or conservation easements, which are allowed and are used, but increasing the frequency of that use to preserve sort of conservation areas from where appropriate from development. Um, Policy ideas around reducing impervious surface lot coverage. I already mentioned removing parking minimums and other types of lot coverage minimum requirements, requiring increased landscaping, requiring native plantings, working with partners in the community to identify where we can do water quality improvements. I know there are a lot of these creeks running through. A lot of impaired creeks run through common ground of subdivisions, and so how identifying ways to partner with those subdivisions to gain access to remediate and clean those. Um, Additionally, launching sort of a community-based reforestation restoration initiative, really relying on St. Louis County Parks, which is probably everybody's favorite county department. Sorry, any of my colleagues that are on the call. In working with them and nonprofit and community organizations to do some of that work. Encouraging transit-oriented design, right? Leveraging our existing transit network to really sort of build up sort of transit nodes and activity along those corridors. So increasing housing and commercial uses around bus stops, around Metrolink stations, strengthening our trail and bike network, partnering with folks like GRG to really develop a robust greenway network that is recreational, but also is an engine for renewed economic development. Planning for increasing potentially transit stations or other modes of new transit options that aren't really present in our region or the county, like a bus rapid transit system. Working with Metro to find ways to provide more frequent, reliable bus service. A lot of this is, I mean, Metro has such a large service area. It's very expensive service to provide for when you don't have the sort of required density of users, right? Which they don't because we spread out so far, right? So identifying ways to strengthen existing corridors and bus routes to make that sort of calculus a little easier for them is something that we're looking at doing. Restoring brownfields as a sort of economic tool to help reduce some of the it has environmental benefits, but also reduce a lot of those upfront costs for development that can be really cost prohibitive in preventing development from getting off the ground. Looking at building decarbonization, energy efficiency in the county. Current county building code is 2015. The whole energy chapter was pulled out. Department of Public Works and the building commission is looking at the 2023 building code right now, and so working with them on not just keeping energy codes in, but finding ways to even increase those requirements, supporting energy efficient design, incentivizing energy efficiency, renewable energy with the sort of financial incentives and resources that the county has, making it easier to adaptively reuse or do infill development for sort of internal county operations, using more renewable energy and alternative fuels for our operations, for our buildings and vehicles and that sort of thing. One idea that we also have is sort of developing this Sustainable Communities Financial Incentive Program. to encourage developers and organizations to create the types of development that we need and want to see to help address some of these issues rather than just the same development that we've always been seeing, right? And so the way county government has historically operated, right, is um, property owner wants to do something, they let us know, and we say, yeah, you're allowed to do that, go ahead. Or no, you're not allowed to do that. You need to get permission to do it and then go ahead, right? There's room for us to change the way we think and be more proactive in saying, this is the type of development we want. And we're going to support that by incentivizing it, making it easier for you to do that, encourage you to do the types of development that we want, that we think the community wants, and that we really need, so that we can be a more equitable, sustainable region. I think that's everything I've got. Obviously, that's not all the policy ideas that we're looking at. It's just sort of a snapshot. I have no idea what time it is, so I apologize if I took up too much of it. But I'm happy to answer any questions. You can always email myself or the STL Code 2050 inbox. We have a website dedicated specifically to this project, stlouiscounty2050.com. So you can go there and subscribe for updates and follow along. As we move forward with finalizing the draft plan, we'll be going back out to folks in April to sort of share the final plan document and say, this is what we heard from folks about their concerns, what they see as opportunities. These are our ideas of how we can address them. Are we all on board? Are we ready to do this, to move forward? And if so, then we'll move the plan along and ask all of you to come to county council. I'm not going to ask you to come to county council and provide comment, but if you want to, that'd be great. So that's where we're at. We do have some other planning processes lined up, hopefully starting in third or fourth quarter 2025. We've been appropriated funds to do a climate action plan for St. Louis County. Really hoping to build off of the work that Anna and Aaron are doing with the sort of region-wide comprehensive climate action plan. We're also received funding to do a small area study of Spanish Lake, which if you think of the comp plan as sort of the 30,000 foot view framework of where the county wants to go over the next 25 years, the small area study is the real ground parcel by parcel land use recommendations, where we can really identify specific changes to the built environment, which you can't really get at that sort of localized level in a comp plan. So with that, I'll shut up and take questions and get some water.
Got a couple questions online, but then maybe we could take questions from the room. And please feel free to share more questions online too. Someone online asked, how do we measure growth?
How do we measure growth?
So it's more in the beginning of the presentation.
Yeah.
I think it was the county growth.
Yeah, so growth for us is really we need to get back to increasing our population. I think for our region and for our county, that is finding a way to create communities that are attractive to new residents, whether those are in-migrants or new Americans. Recognizing that is a sort of challenging idea over the next 4 years at least, but this is not a 4-year plan. This is a 25-year plan, right? And a lot of this, I think this is a hard thing for people to sort of come to terms with or understand, is that change is not going to happen overnight. We didn't get where we are overnight. It wasn't given to us on high. It was decisions we made that created what we see. We can make different decisions and create something different, but it's going to take time to to create that, right? So attracting new residents, new population leads to new business, new opportunities, but also can allow us to start creating the types of sort of land use pattern and built environment that is more fiscally responsible, a denser development pattern than what we currently have, right? So it's not just building things or moving people around. We don't just want to take everybody who moved out to St. Charles County and bring them back to the county or to St. Louis County. That's not what we're trying to do. We want to attract new folks, but it's also recognizing that we likely can't grow our way out of this problem. There's only so many folks that are going to come to St. Louis County, no matter what we do. So there are real sort of hard questions to be asked about what are the resources we have and how do we allocate those, right? And that's what we're trying to do with the comp plan is identify those sort of policy ideas that sort of move the needle the most, give us the most bang for our buck, I guess. So that's what growth is for me. I don't know what growth is for you. It might be something different, but that's okay.
Technically,
So-
there was no question mark on the end, so it might have just.
Well, that was a thorough answer though, so very informative.
Right.
And another question online, and then the last question online, then we'll get to questions in person. Any chance you're considering solar panels over the parking lots? I have a somewhat related, maybe just a comment, when it comes to brownfields that you mentioned on one slide. There's some large scale solar being developed on, there's a closed landfill in Belleville that has one, and then there's a company developing large scale solar on closed coal mines in Illinois. And so just wanted to throw that out there, food for thought for brownfields, but specifically for their question, solar panels over parking lots.
Yeah. So yes, definitely we are wanting to make it easier for people to use solar panels and really any source of renewable energy or alternative energy, whether that's residential or commercial, right? Solar panels over parking lots, adaptive reuse of existing brownfield sites, making it easier to do community solar. I can envision a world where neighborhoods that have, subdivisions that have common ground can put sort of community solar systems in that power that subdivision, the homes in that subdivision. So yeah, these are the types of things we're looking to do and implement and create sort of that regulatory environment that makes it easier for folks to do those things. There's a lot of challenges right now in terms of permitting to be able to install solar panels. The county contracts with, I don't know, 90% or so of the municipalities within the county to do permitting services, which is, it's just leveraging the county's economies of scales, like somewhere like, well, really none of the municipalities can really afford to have an elevator inspector on staff, whereas the county can, right? So we provide those services by contract to those municipalities, and it can be a real challenge for communities that are looking to make it easier for their residents to do this type of thing, to install solar panels or whatever it might be, because of the county's sort of permitting process. So finding ways to refine that so it's easier to do that and reduce that burden on the end user. Those are all things that we're thinking about. Yeah.
Paul, how are you interacting with the county council right now? Are they watching you along the way and agreeing with this as you go, or are you gonna just present it to them at the end and hear what they have to say?
Yeah, so we've been talking with them from the beginning, probably, from before we even put out an RFP and contracted with a consultant to do this, right? They were the ones that appropriated us the money to start on this. And we've been meeting with them frequently, and the county executive's office. Are we in perfect alignment on everything with all 7 members? No. But I don't think we need to be. I mean, ultimately I only need 4 to get it passed, but hopefully all 7 vote yes. But we understand that our plan is going to mean something different to everybody, whether you're a council member or a municipality. Everyone has sort of their role to play in the future of our county and our region. And we are hopeful that, and think we've been doing enough of that sort of upfront work that each council member will be able to latch onto something and really find something that they can support in the plan. Do I envision there will be some sort of legislative delay once it hits their agenda? Probably. That's just the nature of the beast, how things go, right? But yeah, I think we understand that it's not everybody is gonna agree with all of it, and that's okay. But we've done enough of the upfront work to get people on board. And if it comes time to put on their agenda and they're like, what the hell is this? I have not done my job. So
Well, I think, and you did engagement in everybody's districts. You made sure you did pop-up events. You were public meetings in 3 out of the 7. So I think you heard from the people, the statistically valid survey. There's a lot of coverage.
For folks who don't know, this is Lorna Curdy. She's with Shockey Consulting. She's not just some random person who's been really closely following this planning process. She's been working with
I'm on their newsletter.
Yeah, she reads it word for word when she drafts it. No, but she's Lorna and Shockey has been working with us on our community outreach and engagement, and we really appreciate that as well.
It's been really fun and enlightening.
I'll add up a question.
Yes.
So you're in the sustainability lab.
Yeah.
We talk about sustainability. Turns out the comprehensive plan really captures the spirit of what sustainability is about. It is everything. So therefore it's nothing. So I have a question about the word "and."
Mhm.
You have housing diversity and affordability as an opportunity, and then you have social and environmental resilience as an opportunity. Can you speak to why those were grouped together? And by the way, I love that they're grouped together.
Yeah.
So don't think I'm questioning those choices.
Sure.
But just in the journey of landing on your opportunities, I could see that being 4 opportunities,
Yeah.
not 2.
No, absolutely. And we've had some internal discussions about not wanting to, but when we group things, are we diminishing one or both, right? I think part of it is just trying to find the easiest way to communicate our ideas and make it digestible for folks. But also I think in a lot of ways, like we take housing diversity and affordability, for example, those really go hand in hand, right? The lack of different housing typologies in the county has led to these issues with affordability. It's not the only thing, but it is one of the key contributors to our affordability problems. The sort of social and you can't divorce the sort of socioeconomic impacts of our built environment from the sort of environmental impacts of our built environment. So I think those are sort of the reasons that we group those together. They naturally fit, but also I need people to read this. So I can't have so much that I start to lose folks. But that's a real challenge as well, right? Is communicating these ideas to people that aren't really thinking about it all the time. Like they sort of intuitively understand what you're talking about because they see that in their day-to-day life, right? And they experience it, but they don't typically aren't talking about it or thinking about it all the time. So trying to find the easiest way to communicate those ideas is, I mean, it's a real challenge. Thankfully, we got Lorna and her team to help us out.
What I was gonna say too, one of the slides that I think that could be a little bit clearer is how all those, the colorful circles that
Yeah.
were solution policy kind of bubbles. But, and then each of them had, so the team thought very much on how all of these issues intertwine together and how can we solve or come up with policies that don't just solve this one thing,
yeah.
but we're solving this other thing while we're solving. And so that slide is one that
Yeah,
I think we could highlight a bit more on the interconnective work that they did to identify those things and how they work together to make it more every solution set is like more comprehensive because it's not just solving one driver.
thanks for the live notes on my, I'll tweak that for next time.
Question.
Yes. So, thank you, Kay.
Hi. So this is a big plan for all of St. Louis County. How is the county collaborating or planning to collaborate with like the individual municipalities of the county on implementing these things? Or is there any collaboration with the city? I know they're just wrapping up their land use plan.
Right. Yeah. That's a great question. So, all 87, right. Yes. 87 of the municipalities within St. Louis County, have their own sort of unique role to play. And the plan is not going to mean the same thing to Florissant as it does to a Jennings, as it does to a Wildwood, right? And we understand that. We have been, just as we've been intentional to, to Aaron's point earlier of really engaging with the county council, we've reached out to all 87 municipalities. Have we heard back from all of them and talked with all of them? No. But we have talked to a fair number. And really, I think what it is the county recognizing that there's an opportunity for the county to really lead in a lot of these sort of arenas, and a lot of the communities within the county have been looking for that. Every time we have met with somebody, we've been hearing like, we're really excited you're doing this. We've been waiting for the county to sort of step up to the plate, right? And some of it is as sort of the higher form of government, we can help pull those communities along with us, right? If they're contracting with us for permitting services and we change the way we permit or the regulations, they by default have to go along with us, or they got to figure it out themselves. And they're not going to do that because they can't afford to do that. So some of it is we're going to drag folks along with us, but some of it is there's real opportunity and things that communities have been wanting to accomplish that they really haven't been able to do on their own. And for us, the comp plan is an opportunity to identify how can St. Louis County sort of step in, bring our resources to bear to help support that. I think one specific example I can think of, from the conversations we've had with, mayors and city administrators is particularly in Mid-County, like, Big Bend, running through Richmond Heights and Clayton and Brentwood. Those communities have their own specific land use goals and sort of vision for what that corridor looks like for them. And that has been up to this point, completely divorced from what County Transportation and Public Works, which is responsible for the maintenance of that road, does, right? They don't consider those local land use concerns. They consider how to, and I'm not speaking ill of my colleagues in TPW, but it's the way we've designed our regulations, the way we've designed our funding mechanisms. Their goal primarily is it's levels of service, right? How can I get as many vehicles through as fast as I can? And that doesn't align with what those communities want. So this is an opportunity for us to step back and say, maybe we can envision a different future for this corridor. And there are plenty of these throughout the county, right? Where we can reduce the width of the roadway. We can add increased pedestrian infrastructure so that these communities can see real tangible benefits, right? And then, we've been talking with the city of St. Louis and a lot on sort of what they're trying to do in identifying where we have shared goals and ways that we can sort of align and work together on, because I mean, they have a lot of similar challenges in front of us that we do, right? And the health of the city of St. Louis is as important to the health of St. Louis County and the region as the health of the county is to the city and the region. So, yeah.
Thank you.
A question on the transit piece, just thinking about how do you get to a point where maybe it's not, you know, funding is obviously one of the most important things.
Yep.
But, you know, trade-off between roads and transit and also I'm just wondering how much involvement or connection there's been between the sort of county connector studies that have gone on, you know, with the energy associated with the green line and this effort and in terms of what maybe the future of transit expansion and access looks like.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, the sort of north side community connector into the county, like the green line, I'm not, I guess I'm not a Sith. I don't speak in absolutes. I don't know. It's been a while since I've watched Star Wars. Sorry. But expansion of the green line into the county is probably not going to happen for a whole host of reasons. But that doesn't mean that there is not opportunity for other avenues to be explored. I think we're looking really hard at what BRT could look like in North County. But what we've been doing is through the comp plan process is working with Metro and East West Gateway on identifying priority corridors for county to invest our resources in, existing transit corridors that we can sort of enhance and strengthen. You know, what are the areas that Metro sees as real opportunity, and then working with East West Gateway to use their travel demand model to sort of do some scenario planning around what do if we were to make these specific land use changes along this corridor, what would the potential impact of that be? Which is, I think, is a sort of a unique approach in comprehensive planning, and it hasn't really been done before. And so we're really excited to partner with those entities and understanding what the county can do, but also what we can't do, and that we have to partner with these folks to sort of align on a shared vision and shared goals and figure out how to make that into a reality, right? Where we do have a more robust transit network. I think a lot of it comes down to it's just really expensive service to provide, and we currently don't have the density required to provide service at the levels that we would want to see. So, what role can county play in helping to create that sort of built environment where transit can be successful?
Thanks.
Plenty of questions. I can go ahead.
Oh, sure. Are we still in the questions portion or can we introduce some discussion to move on?
I'm not in charge.
Okay.
Moderating,
Go
so.
ahead.
Okay. I know this is, hello, my name is Melody Newton and I work for New Earth Farm, which is a community composter servicing the region, but I'm also part of the food waste working group from OneSTL. And I just wanted to introduce a discussion around food waste and composting. So if you don't mind giving me a couple minutes, I have some points, so I'll be more concise. So forgive the sort of line for line reading, but it'll be a little bit faster. I tend to ramble. So I stapled this the wrong direction. That's great. So essentially it's a bit 11th hour to be adding another policy priority, and I understand that, but I did want to note just for the sustainable infrastructure point, food waste and food recovery is really important, and more government agencies and municipalities and NGOs are recognizing that. And there are a lot of things that can be done at a county level that are policy changes that would have a ripple effect for improving or assisting in a lot of the work that's already being done in terms of food recovery and composting. And the fact that there's just sort of a lack of policy or regulation or ordinances discussing food recovery, separate from other organics recovery, especially, and other municipal solid waste. So to start, just one of the things that, composting is important. There's a number of reasons why, but one thing we can point to is the regional food waste report from NRDC, MoBOT, Earth Day 365, and the city of St. Louis. Some of the numbers that came out of that report were that 666,000 tons of food waste, so 1,000 times 2,000 pounds of food waste are produced in St. Louis, the St. Louis region annually. And that is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 counties surrounding the city of St. Louis. And about 40% of all the food in the US is wasted. So if you consider that's the proportion of the food that we're consuming, that's how much of it is ending up wasted. And all the other notable figures are that food insecurity in St. Louis is at 8%. Food waste is a big part of that. And the biggest two contributors to food waste are residential, which is individuals in their homes, and restaurants. And policy changes addressing those food waste producers would be very impactful. The other thing I wanted to point out was that the St. Louis City Mayor's office issued a proclamation last year to create a food waste awareness day, late November, I don't remember the exact date. It also outlines some of the reasons that addressing the food waste issue is important. And the other thing that it does is, and I will read directly, the city of St. Louis commits to developing a strategy for preventing food from going to waste, rescuing surplus food, and recycling food scraps by December 2024. That more or less did happen. And so just an example for the county. The other thing that I wanted to go into was more specifics of some diversion numbers from New Earth Farm in particular, just to put into context what diverting food waste can do. So from September 2023, at September 2023, New Earth Farm, which was founded in 2020, reached 1 million pounds of food waste and organics diverted from landfill for composting, which using a ReFEDS calculator and the Missouri Office of Administration's fiscal year 2023 MSRP report, I was able to calculate that is equivalent. 1 million pounds of food waste diverted to composting from landfill is equivalent to a 12.62 ton reduction in methane emissions. And 62, this is we all like the money, it's $62,735 in tipping fees saved for the county or for the city and county in the regions that we serve. So a lot of good work being done in composting already, and some pretty big benefits from doing it. We're in a floodplain with a thin layer of soil. Soil remediation is really important, keeping that, those nutrients out of landfill where they're no longer accessible, also important. Moving on, as the problem pertains to the county, more specifically, there is a very fractured and incomplete backyard composting ordinance landscape. OneSTL, I don't remember exactly who filed it, but there's a great list on, you filed it, awesome. So I'm referencing this awesome list of all of these composting ordinances. And like, for example, Webster Groves has a really good one that, could serve as an example. There are also other sample ordinances, but there's a lot of just sort of nothing, no mention of it, which leaves people open to, doing it incorrectly. And on top of that, discourages from people in doing it in general. Which is unfortunate because backyard composting is widely regarded as the best method for composting, has a really low rate of contamination, no footprint in terms of the miles for those nutrients to travel, and those nutrients are returned directly to local soils, and it can be very low cost. And then moving on, something relating to sort of larger scale composting, there are no local composting ordinances for very necessary larger composting operations, particularly community composting. So not everyone can or wants to compost at home, and not all materials can be or are advisable to compost via backyard methods. And industrial operations, while they're very necessary part of organics waste management, they can struggle to produce quality compost. They have a large footprint requiring they be distant from residential and commercial areas, and they're seldom directly involved in community education around food waste recovery, and community composting fills in all these gaps. New Earth is just one of a few community composters. We are not the only one servicing the region. So this is work that's already happening, and there are things that can be done to help assist with that work. So lack of clear regulation puts composters of all types, backyard, community, industrial, at risk of being non-compliant and losing their ability to perform essential waste management, as well as neglecting to protect the community from poorly managed, unsafe composting efforts. And a lack of legal compulsion demotivates food waste producers from diverting that food waste from landfill, despite the capability of existing operations to handle that waste. And just to finish it out, I wanted to mention like a way to take action, essentially. So if this is made a policy priority, one recommendation that I would have, and I think a lot of folks in the space would agree with, would be the creation of a strategy for preventing food from going to waste, rescuing surplus food, and recycling food scraps, similar to the one that the mayor's office created. And part of that process should include collaboration with stakeholders, especially residents, municipalities, businesses, and nonprofits already working in the space. I'm sure we all agree with that. You're doing a lot of that work already in terms of communication. And then there are a lot of model ordinances that can be easily pulled from to make these changes pretty efficiently. And potential actions of the plan could be adopting a countywide backyard composting ordinance, which would be pretty straightforward in terms of finding like a sample ordinance. And I mean, changing ordinances straightforward, that's kind of, incompatible.
Sure,
but in
yeah.
terms of finding, an example, there's also the option to re-examine the language around waste disposal and transfer to actually specifically address composting, food waste, particularly instead of just generally organics waste or just municipal solid waste. We can also mandate reporting for large food waste generators, designate funding, or even, this is crazy, but it works in some instances, ban food waste from the list of acceptable materials for municipal solid waste for various food waste producers. So that was a lot. I have this written down, but I just basically wanted to introduce the idea of adding another policy priority addressing food waste or food insecurity, that sort of thing, and the fact that I can speak more specifically to the composting element. Thank you for hearing me out. I try to be fast about it.
Yeah, I want to add, it's usually that kind of policy isn't in a land use and transportation plan, but that they have their climate action plan funding to do that.
Yeah.
That's like the perfect opportunity to talk about that, because I think part of it is we need to engage with Missouri Department of Natural Resources, because it's statewide regulations that kind of limit a lot of the large scale composting. So we'll have to look at that and figure out if there's something we need to advocate together with the state, make it easier for large scale stuff.
Well, and the land use thing is totally, like, all the zoning and things, that's totally a big part of it, but the other part of it is sort of saying and dedicating resources to basically putting it out there. We want to create a plan. We want to prioritize addressing the issue of food waste and food insecurity. That's kind of the larger picture.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing that up. And to Aaron's point, yeah, I do think like the comp plan can start to ask those questions and sort of point us in that direction. And it's something certainly something we can look at including. I think the climate action plan would be have more detailed information on what something like that could look like. But we've also there's opportunity. I mean, just in 2024, Peter could probably speak about this better than I, because he did more of the lift on this. But we were able to successfully amend county code to allow for what we call managed natural landscapes, essentially just making it easier and clearer for residents to plant native plants, which previously might have been considered a nuisance or noxious weeds or whatever it might be. So it's not unprecedented to do that type of code change. It is, as you alluded to, a little difficult and is easier if you can have have it as sort of a priority or recommendation, which I think is probably a large part of the reason you bring it up in a plan document. So that's something we can look at, certainly. I mean, I personally have had initial conversations with the Parks Department about how can parks partner with organizations like yours and the community to use their physical space to support composting and countywide and regionally. And I mean, there are a lot of hurdles to that. Mostly it's around resources, the financial and personnel. But you know, those are things that we're considering and thinking about, and definitely keep bringing it up. And
Okay, thank you.
yeah, appreciate it. Yeah.
And for some additional context, so OneSTL, in addition to organizing these sustainability labs, has working groups. So the whole food waste working group is, because it's been a priority for them. They've all been working on it. The co-leader is on Zoom, and she said, "Thank you for bringing this up, Melody," and is sharing links to some of the reports that they've been working on. So just wanted to mention that it's been a priority for that group. Are there any, let's see, we've got 3 minutes left. Are there any other in the room questions? If not, we have a couple online.
I have a quick question. Do you think there's any chance of the county updating building codes before this plan is
Adopted? No. I mean, they just started looking at, like, the building code review committee just started in late 2024. I think last time when they adopted the 2015 code, it took them like almost 2 years. Because like they literally what they do, their meetings are at 7:45 a.m. I think. But they go through the code line by line, chapter by chapter, and talk about it. And so no, yeah. So no, I don't think it will be done before.
and that's the group that eliminated, that pulled out the efficiency.
The energy chapter,
yeah.
yes, yeah, last time, yeah, they're the ones.
But you think they're looking at 2023?
I think it's 2023.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
This is more of a comment from online, but someone mentioned zero population growth is more ecological. More people equals more consumption. So is it all bad? And then a question, who do I talk to about updating Maplewood's info for the compost ordinance table? That would probably be me and Aaron, actually, to update that table. So I'll make a note of that.
Yeah, I did that a couple of years ago too, so there might very well be some updates.
Okay. And then the very last question, how can we join a OneSTL working group? I'll put my email in the chat and just email me and I'll check in. We don't lead the working group, so we have to check in with the working group leaders, but
hey, Anna, what are the other working groups?
excellent question, Kyle. So the food waste working group is a subcommittee of the materials and recycling working group. There's also biodiversity, which is very excited to see that native landscaping ordinance passed in the county. Transit-oriented development, with which Travis helps lead, and the energy and emission. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
All nice people. So,
Till you cross them.
right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Paul, and thanks to everyone for coming. Next month, we'll be talking about the city's sustainability and climate action plan. And for those of us here in person, we will reconvene for some drinks at T-Rex's Lounge. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. Another great